tells me it's going live now. So, okay, we're on air. Okay, all good. Welcome everybody. Apologies, we are just a couple of minutes late. Just need to get our technology sorted out here. My name is Noel Harvey. I'm the Chief Administrator with the Shire, and I'm joined this afternoon with Karen Douglas. Karen is my colleague here, also fellow administrator, and Hugh Delahunty was to join us, but is unable to for family reasons this afternoon. So it's just Karen and I who will be fielding some questions. So it's great to have everyone involved. This is very much an experiment. We've never done anything like this before, and I think I've said on my Facebook page, I think it's probably the first time any council has done what we're trying to do today. So, and we've had lots of interest. I've had lots of people contact me. We've had quite a few people send in emails and text messages. So we do have quite a few issues that people want to talk to us about. And so I just want to run through what those issues are. So, and then you'll know what are the issues that we're going to talk about. We have had, and these are all in response to a whole range of questions that we've had. I've had some questions, particularly in relation to the new community plants, is one that we have had a question about. We've had a number of questions in relation to the declaration of the Shire becoming a welcome zone for refugees. We've clearly had several people bringing in questions about the Carisbrook levy and progress there. Council elections coming up not too far down the track. We've had questions around our rates and rate increases. Denali mosaics, the dump point in Denali is one of those which has been raised. And I think there's a couple of other ones which I was going to mention. I just can't find it here. Oh yes, there was a question we received around the L2P driving program for our young people. So that's the range of issues that we've had raised with us to this point. Please feel free at any time if you want to send in further questions. You can email them in to Kate through administrators to admin at media at Seagull Shire. That's right, I get that right. So please, as we've advertised, so if you want to, please continue to email them in. Well, I do have in the room here with me Kate and Lockie, who are from our comms department. They are helping here field some of the questions and writing some of the questions down as they come in to make sure that we can answer them. Now, Karen hasn't seen the questions in advance like I've had the advantage, or hasn't seen all of them because we've had quite a few questions come in just in the last little while. So we'll do our best. We are going to conduct this very much like a traditional listening post as much as we can. This isn't, of course, a traditional listening post, but we're going to try to be as informal. And if there are issues that we can't answer, then we will simply take them on notice and we will then come back to the questioner with an answer, just like we would as part of our listening post process. We will maintain, obviously, people's confidentiality, so we're not going to talk about who's actually raised the questions. There are several questions that have been raised on one or two different issues, then we'll just pull them all together as one issue that you want us to talk about. That's how we're going to run it. So please stay on board for as long as you can. We're not going to be hours and hours doing this work, but we are really going to try to answer the questions that we have been presented to us. So I might kick off actually with the very first question that came in a few days ago. This was in relation to the L2P driver program for our young people. I'm presuming it's come in by one of the participants in that program. I won't read it out because there was a lot of background information that came in there. I guess it was clearly raising some frustrations around the ongoing provision of that program while the COVID lockdowns are in place. And they're wanting to know why they can't keep that program going. And that obviously the writer of that question feels that the restrictions that are being imposed are overly onerous and felt it was probably unreasonable. I guess the only way we can answer that question, and Karen, please jump in if I've missed something, is that all the decisions that we have made are consistent with the requirements and the obligations we have that have been given to us by the state government. These aren't regulations that we make. These are regulations that everybody in the state has to live by. We may or may not agree with them, and I can't say that I necessarily agree with them all either, but they are the rules that we are all as a community required to live by. It doesn't really matter, and I think the evidence has clearly shown that even though we have only had one infection in the Shire, as the writer of this question pointed out, there could be another one tomorrow. And that's I guess is the nature of what we're dealing with. We just don't know who's got it, who's spreading it, and it's been clear that that's what's happened in other places. And the last thing we want is our community to be exposed in any way. And our responsibility is to make sure we do that all we can to protect the interests of the community. So I guess that's the only way I can answer that question. We will reopen that as soon as the regulations allow us to. At this stage, whilst it's possible to have two people in a car together and maintain the physical distancing that's required, the regulations clearly state that at this point, those sorts of programs can't be activated. And I assure the questioner in this regard that particular program will be activated just as soon as we possibly can, as we are starting to open up some of council services at the moment. Karen, did you want to add anything to that one at this stage?
Look, thanks, Noel. This, I think, is probably really a trying thing for those young people who are involved in this, and the sooner the better, really. The only other thought that I might have would be in your regular meetings with your group, including Louise Staley, it might be something we can advocate a little bit for. I mean, it might be something that's gone under the radar a little bit, but it does seem to me it would be quite a reasonable thing to sort of really just say, look, there are people here who are dying to actually get on and do this. Not dying, I shouldn't have said that. But but I do think that some of those things may not be considered as sort of right in front of everybody's notice at the moment. So it wouldn't hurt, I think, for us to actually talk about that a little bit. There's probably other councils that might be advocating for the same thing. I'm not too sure who else is running these programs.
No, I don't either, but let's take that on board, and I can certainly raise it with that group. But I guess all we can do at this stage is assure people that we will be opening up every council program that we can reopen will be reopened to the community as soon as as soon as we're allowed to, and as soon as we can make sure that we can operate them safely.
Yeah.
Okay. No. So I guess that's the best we could do with that question at the moment, and we'll see where that takes us from there. Yeah. Now, we have had several questions, and a couple of them came in early and a couple of them came in late. We sort of rolled them all together. This is a question in relation to the Shire declaring the Central Goldfield Shire as a welcome zone for refugees. This is an issue which has been raised at several listening posts in the past, and obviously is continuing. There's a very passionate group of people out there who are pursuing this one, and that's fine. I don't say it's an important issue. Generally speaking, though, our position has been that we have not had the capacity to do that. We did make a commitment, and the commitment remains that when we had our manager of community partnerships on board, that would be a function or an action that would fit in that officer's role, and would be part of. But to do that, it would need to be part of council's action plan. And of course, we are in the process of developing the action plan going forward. So that will be picked up at that time. And I think that's a commitment that we gave probably 6 months ago, that's when we would be picking up that particular issue. Karen, you have some views on this one, as do I. I'm happy to share mine. Would you want to make any comments around that one?
Well, we've had quite a lot of discussion about this at the listening posts, and I think it's wonderful that sentiment is there, and there is such a group of passionate people. And this is spread actually right across the listening posts. It wasn't, which was, I think, reinforces the fact that where people are really wanting to be of some help and to address this problem. I think that we have to be very careful about our capacity to actually carry this through, so that in fact we do know what it might mean and what it might entail. I think unfortunately, the virus has sort of stopped us all in a lot of these areas of actually progressing some of these things and trying to schedule what we can fit in still with our time left here, I suppose, and the constraints that's put on how much we can talk some of these things through with the people we do need to. So it's not forgotten. I don't know that we've made a lot of progress, Noel, about this.
Yeah.
And that's a bit disappointing from our perspective, because we are trying at this stage from now on, we're trying to sort of do more about those things that haven't been really followed through to a suitable, where we can walk away and say, yes, we did what we could at this point in time.
I think
it's not forgotten.
Yeah, certainly not forgotten. I think the other point that probably needs to be made there also, Karen, is we certainly didn't have any intention that we would simply come out and unilaterally make such a declaration without engaging the community more broadly.
Yeah.
And that's an important part of this, because I mean, yes, whilst we may have a group of people who are passionately driving this, and rightly so, we also felt it was important. We actually went through an engagement process with the community to make sure we brought the community with us. Otherwise, it then just becomes just an empty statement that didn't mean anything. So that's why we needed to make sure it's actually built into council's plan, so that we shall undertake that piece of work before we get to that point. So the question about whether or not that will happen whilst we are still here, I suspect it probably won't, given what's happened and the slowing down of so many things through this COVID for the last few months, which has slowed a few things down. I guess we're going to need to make some choices about which issues we push on through with and which ones we actually will leave with some recommendations clearly to the incoming council. And I guess this is one we're going to have that discussion sometime soon. It hasn't been forgotten, and I assure those people, I think it came from 3 or 4 different people, I assure you it has not been forgotten. It is on our radar because it has been raised right across the Shire. It started off in Talbot, to be honest, and I think the very first listening post it got raised, but since then I think it's been raised at Denali and Carisbrook, and I think and here in Maryborough. So in all those major centres, then we've actually had this issue raised. So it is clearly something that resonates with people in that community. So it's still there, and certainly not been forgotten. I assure you the question is about that. Okay, so look, if people are joining us, there may be some people who've joined us since we started. This is our first attempt at our virtual listening posts. We are conducting these discussions, and that's what it is as best we can. We are receiving and have received a number of questions, and we will continue to receive. And I invite you to send in your questions even while we're talking, because I have Lockie and Kate here in the room with me, who are preparing those questions and slipping them across to me as they come in. So please don't hold back. We would love to. We'd love to hear from you. So let's move with that. Karen, do you want to just sort of introduce the issue of our community plans? This is a really important issue, which we actually finalised or didn't finalise. We finalised the first step, I guess, at the council meeting on Tuesday night. Do you want to just make some comments about that?
Well, actually, it was interesting because I think one of the questions that you mentioned earlier, Noel, was about the dump point in Denali.
Yep.
Now, at the meeting that we held in Denali, and it was very well attended, and there were ideas bouncing off the wall, as what you would expect at a meeting like that in Denali or any of the townships. But we all were challenged about what was low-hanging fruit, what was the project that the community had been trying to get a resolution to, and usually this comes down to the location. There's one in Denali, there's one in the Oliver about the George and Ann Billis water trough, and we've got to get past these before I think we can move to some of the more longer term and what we're going to do. And in Denali, the dump point was the obvious one. They're very welcoming of caravanners, and they want them to come, they want them to be there, and to have a dump point in that side of the Shire, I think would be fantastic. There is one in the caravan park, but it's not really easily accessed unless you're actually, I understand, in the actual caravan park. So I don't know what the question was, but I did actually chuckle a bit.
The question came on, is there any movement on the dump point in Denali for caravanners? So it was quite a simple question. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't suppose there has been.
Yes, there has been. Go on. You probably know as well. Yeah, yes, there is.
No, I don't know that. So please.
Okay. Well, actually, because this one came in earlier this morning, and I was able to sort of quickly get some answers to find out where it had got to. Yes, we are still exploring the opportunities, but Karen, you mentioned the existing dump point that's in the caravan park, and we are in discussions with the management at the caravan park to make sure we can get public access to that dump point. So we don't need to build another one. We can do some works to make sure that the existing point is accessible to people from outside the park. Now, that will require some upgrade to some fencing, to alterations to fencing and driveways and footpaths and so on. But apparently that's obviously going to be carried by the council. So yes, those negotiations are getting very close, and we're hoping to have an announcement very soon about that one. So it has actually moved forward. And I was very pleased to hear that one. This has been raised a number of times up in Denali. So it's been good to have a bit of an update.
So well done, Denali, because I'm pretty sure that was on their list in the community plan. So they're off and running. How great is that? So that's really good. But the community plans, I really would reinforce what you said at the council meeting, Noel. And they are very easy to read. These aren't huge tomes with lots of diagrams about, mechanical drawings and things like that. These are really from the heart, what people that are really proud of their townships, and it's involved all stages of our communities and population, age groups, children, young and the older kids, often in some of the small towns. They had an opportunity to express what they really wanted to see happen there. So this is a really exciting thing. It's been, I think, a project that has been very well done, very well researched. And we've been left with some really great guiding documents for all of the communities. So again, I think we're really sorry we haven't been able to actually go out and promote and do launches and get things rolling in a more spectacular way. But we are really anxious to get started and to get some things happening. And I'm sure that probably the first thing will be to connect the council managers that are the champions of these locations and the plans, Noel, to get in touch with who they need to get in touch with to actually ensure what next. After we've now adopted them, this is where we start. This is where the work starts.
Yeah, and it's a really important step. And so we made lots of comments about this during the council meeting. Every 8 different towns and surrounding areas has now got their local plans. And the intention now, the question actually was quite specifically about now that council has adopted the community plans, what happens now? When will we see some action and implementation? That was a direct question. So I guess in terms of where it goes now, clearly the pandemic lockdown has had an impact on what we can do right now. But clearly our plans are going forward, that the implementation of each of these plans is in fact the responsibility of the individual communities supported by the council. Council's role is to take some of these initiatives and feed them into our budget processes, and to make sure that we consider those when we're developing our capital works plans and things like that, but also then to go and advocate for those bigger programs that may be funded by state and federal governments. That's our role, to work with the communities to do that. And I think so far we've got a pretty good record of attracting funding. And it's also worthwhile saying, Karen, that the discussion we had earlier this week around the latest announcement of $870,000 or so that we got from the federal government was around community infrastructure. And we made it really clear to staff, yes, we could put that into roads, and some of it may well go into roads, but it's a really good opportunity for us to say, okay, we will spend that money implementing some of the recommendations that have come out of these community plans. And so I think that's a demonstration of how we can start to implement these. There's some low-hanging fruit out there. Let's knock them over and start to get some of these things knocked over. So when you come to review the plans, we can tick off a whole lot of achievements, say, yep, we've done that.
I think, no, we might need to actually promote who the champions are to the various communities, because... Can
you explain what they are, Karen? Because people may not understand what we mean when we say there are champions for each of these communities.
Well, each of the communities do have a dedicated person on council, managers, and some of the senior staff, and each of those 8 plans then come with a contact person on council for those communities to contact in the very first instance. Now, for some of them, it will mean that they may initiate it. For other things, like you just referred to that latest grant, Noel, there will be opportunities, I think, to go for council to go through the community plans, because there may be a few things that are similar in quite a few of those communities that we could actually address in one project. And so it's going to be a bit of a two-way thing, I think. I think we'll be looking from the council perspective, but also for those people in the communities also to generate, let's have a talk about this. Can you come and talk to us about, can we be involved in this? So I think we've got to build this relationship, and it's important.
Yeah. And that's an important next step, is making sure that those people have been appointed. And I don't have the list in front of me, so we can't even who the officers are that have actually, many of them volunteered to take on and become the champion for a particular area in the Shire.
That was great, wasn't it? I thought, yeah, it was terrific.
That our staff have to the acceptance of the importance of these plans in making our job easier, but also giving the community some certainty about where they might want to go in the future. So if anybody has joined us recently, in recent times, we are chatting about a whole range of issues that questions have been brought in or been sent in to us. So we welcome any new people on board who are watching and participating. So far, we've dealt with the Learn to L to P program, the Learner Driver program. We've talked about the welcoming of refugees. We're talking about the dump point in Denali. We've been talking about our community plans as really important issues that the community has raised with us. So please, if you are listening in and you have a question, a burning question that you want an answer to, please send in an email and to the address which we've provided to you. And I've got Lockie and Kate here in the room with me, and they will pass over any questions that we are receiving as we go. So please keep those questions coming in. I hope you're finding this informative. If there is more information that you do need, that we're raising some issues, all of the things that we're talking about are in fact available on Council's website. And I can't encourage you enough to go and have a look at the website. Our community plans are there. All council documents, all council strategic work are all on our website. And I encourage you to go and have a look at that. Our council meeting, I believe, I'm just checking with our council meeting from the other night, is now up on our website, and you can go and have a listen to the council meeting. I think that's right. If it's not, it will be very soon. So please be patient with that one if it's not up, but it will be up there very, very soon. It's on our Facebook page. I do know that because I checked it out as well. So if you want to go, some of these issues were in fact raised, particularly the community plans. The carriage of those community plans, just before we move on, that actually sits with, I've lost the name, our manager of community, Kim Murphy, our manager of community engagement, I think is what it's called. It's her title. Yep, I got that one right. Kim has carriage of that particular program within council, and has carried this one right from the word go. So thanks, Kim, for all your great work in relation to our community plans. Manager of community partnerships. There you go. I knew I had it written down somewhere. Okay, let's move on. We've had a couple of questions, which this one's a really important question. I'll read it out, Karen, because you wouldn't have seen this one either. The pandemic has had a huge impact on the town. Businesses are really struggling, and I'm worried some won't survive. We now hear that Target is to close on top of Holden closing. Now, I don't think that part of the question is quite correct. Jack Holden, I understand, are looking at options at the moment, so I don't think they've actually, whilst Holdens have gone, I think Jack Holden have got some other plans. So not sure.
That was my understanding.
Yes, that's right. And then it says that IGA has closed. Some banks have left town, and there's already a lot of empty shops. What is council doing about it? Well, there's a lot in that question. Might just start off by saying, if we just talk about the pandemic for a moment, we have had what's called a task force, a community-based task force, which we have been participating in. It was an initiative of Louise Staley, our local member, who brought together her office, the council, the Committee for Maryborough, which represents the business community, the police were there, the health service were there, all sitting around the table providing leadership through the last couple of months while this pandemic shutdown has been impacting on the community. That's been a really important way of making sure that our messages were consistent, our messages were accurate and well coordinated to the community. And that was the initial purpose of that. Out of that has sprung a couple of other initiatives. There is a business group which came out of Committee for Maryborough, who have organised businesses to work together to coordinate the efforts of business in terms of helping them with their reopening. That's an important initiative that came purely out of the business community, and encourage anybody out there who may be part of a business community or our business community may have a business that's really struggling to cope with the reopening. Contact the Committee for Maryborough. Yeah, they've got a Facebook page and a website. Go and have a chat to them, and they will provide you with some advice in that regard. But also, Council has set up a bit of a task force as well to focus purely on support for business. That is, Hugh Delahunty sits on that, representing the administrators, and Rebecca Stockfeld, who's our general manager in that area, is chairing that particular group. There's a wide representation right across the Shire, and a whole range of different industry sectors who sit around the table and are starting to talk about how we reopen for business and what sort of support can we provide to business in these really difficult times. And I called in to get a coffee on my way here from one of the shops this morning who are participating in that, and she was very positive about the work of that committee. So we are doing what we can with very limited resources. As you'd be aware, Council has very limited resources in this regard, and we have put in place some hardship initiatives to help business and ordinary members of the community through this really difficult time. So I guess that's a pandemic response. There's a more general response about business assistance too, which we might touch on too. So Karen, did you want to say anything around that one?
Well, I suppose only about also the matters, the things we as the council has been able to rethink, and we hope offer assistance in regard to some of the the arrears, some of extending times for things, talking to people if they're in, finding it difficult to meet a commitment with the council. We're open to all sorts of negotiation across a whole range of people in the community. I'm not too sure. I think if we can do more as a council, I'm hoping that the group that Hugh is actually working with now will be able to alert us to things that haven't been sort of the obvious things that might make a difference. I think it will be very difficult for council to actually stimulate reopening of a Target store or an IGA store. I think these things are going to be very, very difficult for many councils right across Australia, really. But, I think the message has got to be, please, if there is anything that can be done that would make a huge difference or a slight difference, we'd like the opportunity to have at least a conversation and to explore if there is something that perhaps through our networks or the partnerships or the regional development type of bodies that we are a party to, Noel, that we may be able to help create some solutions rather than provide the solutions ourselves.
Yeah, and that's.
I think it's going to be very difficult for many people. It's really. I'm not too certain, when this will really be able to be turned around.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm still a bit nervous.
I'm very nervous about it too. And I was reading an article this morning while I was having my breakfast, tragically, about the economic impact of what's been happening. And this particular economist, who I have a lot of respect for, was actually saying, we've only just seen the tip of the iceberg, and the real crunch will come the last 3 months of this year. And I think that's right. As many of these assistance programs and packages start to wind down, and many businesses have actually said to me directly, look, it's really good what council's doing in deferring some of these payments, but the reality is they're still going to have to be paid, and many businesses will struggle for that in some way down the track. So I think it's something which we are really acutely aware of, and we are working as hard as we can within the limitations of what we can do. But obviously we work very closely with state and federal governments to try to access what assistance is there, making sure that our business community is aware of what assistance is there. And I know only last week, in fact, it was only yesterday, I think there was a number of workshops that some of our businesses actually participated in. I think it was run by the City of Greater Bendigo for the region. And we were able to put that information out to the business community via one of these committees that we've got going. So I think that's the sort of thing that we can do as a council, because we don't have the capacity to actually run those programs ourselves. But if they are out there, it's our job to make sure that our business community knows about it. The more broad question, though, Karen, which is just worth touching on, is the fact that for the first time, we actually now do have a dedicated business support person within the council. There is a single person that they need to ring. I think that's Alicia Chadwick is the officer within council who's been given that role as the one first point of contact. So if businesses do have questions, she's the person that people need to ring within council, and she will direct people to where they need to go. But of course, we have Phil, who's been here working in our economic development unit as well. He's been driving the preparation of our economic development and tourism strategy work, and those sort of things are going on in a more broader sense, which identify longer term actions that council takes to support our businesses.
No, and I think Alicia is just a perfect person for that particular role at this point in time, Noel. I was really pleased that this was going to be Alicia's next big target, really. And she'll be well known in this community and people will know her. So that's great.
The other one worth mentioning there too, particularly our tourism sector, which I know has been hit really hard, our accommodation places and things like that, they are really struggling at the moment. We accept that and we understand that. And there is actually the tourism strategy will help answer that. There's some short-term challenges that those businesses have, like everybody else. But I think that's that strategy work that we've done. I know the state government is looking at what options we can now have. The Regional Tourism Board has been given some additional funding to help with the recovery. That's for the region. I spoke very quickly to the chair of that group early on saying, look, I don't want all that money being absorbed by Ballarat and Bendigo. We need to make sure that Central Goldfields operators get access to that support. And I've been assured that wherever possible, we will do that. And I know that Alicia, again, has been sitting in on those meetings, etc., to make sure that the interests of the tourism operators in the Central Goldfields are actually being at least spoken about at the table. And that doesn't happen very often. So I'm very happy we will get some additional support for our tourism sector as a result of that lobbying that we're doing on their behalf. So that does lead us in, Karen, to the next question, which was asked, and you did touch on it just a little. This was around, the question says that some councils are not increasing their rates this year. What's going to happen in Central Goldfields? Can we expect the same consideration?
No, I don't think they can really.
Telling you one,
no.
Well, I think we give it consideration, but I think the reality is it's not likely to happen.
I would think not, and I'm not too certain about the wisdom of doing it. It's a little bit like some councils are offering a lot more assistance than others, and I think Central Goldfields has really been trying very, very genuinely to be able to make a difference to our community right now, right when it's going to really be difficult. We don't know really how long this is going to take. I mean, I think in some ways you might find yourself that this may not have improved by next year. So what are you going to do next year? So I think you have to stick to actually trying to run the business as well as you can with our roads, with our waste management, with all of the things that we do have to cover. They are still with us, whether or not there's a COVID-19 virus and a lockdown and all of this going on. But we do have to really have faith there will be tomorrow. So
it's a really difficult.
People will find it is difficult, and people will do what they can do in their own way to suit their own communities.
I would. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I don't think it would be fair to say that is likely to be what we're going to follow here.
I think so too, and I think most small rural councils are in the same boat. There will be some obviously that do have that capacity, but then I do look at some of those councils who have said that they are going to forego a rate increase, but then part of their budget they've agreed to borrow large amounts of money to offset that. I'm really not sure that that's a very sound move. Yes, interest rates are low, but if you give away income and then borrow to maintain your services, I'm not sure that's a really. The other interesting one to remember, and so we haven't made a decision on this. That's what we need to clear. We are still working through the budget, and we are building a budget, what we are calling a business as usual budget, but then we are making sure we build into that some flexibility, because as Karen says, we don't know how long this is going to go for. We don't know what's going to happen even next week. So we are building some flexibility in that budget. So if we get to that point where we feel it's necessary to take that step, then we will do that. I guess our general view, though, has been, if we give rate relief, has been suggested, there should be no rate increases. I think we need to point out that some of the biggest ratepayers in our shire are very, very large ratepayers. I'm talking about Coles, I'm talking about Woolworths, I'm talking about Aldi's and those sorts of very major businesses in our shire that are doing very well. So I'm reluctant to say, well, I'm going to give rate relief to everybody that includes those businesses that can absolutely afford to continue to pay. So that's why our general view has been, if we're going to give rate relief, it needs to be on a needs basis. And again, that's why we encourage people to come and talk to us if they are struggling. And some businesses have already done that. So I think there's a really good example from those businesses who have actually looked ahead and said, we're going to be really struggling with our rates this year. We better go and talk to council and have done that. So we can then provide particular assistance to those businesses and individuals who are really struggling under our, and we can accommodate them under our hardship provisions, rather than giving across the board discount to everybody, including those people who don't need that discount. And there are many, many individuals and families in our community that are continuing to work and their circumstances really haven't been impacted greatly at all. Do we really think we should be giving them a rate discount over as well as those people who really need it? So I think all I'm saying is we haven't made a decision. We are really mindful of our responsibility to meet the needs of our community in any way that we can, but we need to do it in such a way that is fair and actually make sure that the burden is carried by those people and those businesses who can still afford to carry that burden. So I'm not avoiding the question at all, because I just don't know the answer, because we haven't done our budget, finalising our budget yet. We're still in the midst.
No. But we've had one very quick look at the valuations, which are now obviously have to be done on an annual basis, Noel.
Yep.
So there are some changes there that some we expected, some perhaps not. So yeah, we're not far off here. So we'll be talking about this, I imagine, next week.
Yep, we're very close to doing that budget work now. Okay, let's move along. So if anybody has joined us since we've started, it's great to have you on board joining us again. Again, I encourage you to, if you have any questions to want to follow up with, anything we've touched on a fair range of subjects today. We've still got a couple more to go. But if anybody has some questions, please keep sending them in. I'll have Kate and Lockie here who are ready to hand over to me any questions as they do come in, which they have been doing, which is really good. And again, if you need any additional information over and above what we've been able to provide you with here today, then please go to the website and you'll get an update there as well.
Okay.
Kate, we did have a question around the weed spraying. I haven't got, can you just get that to me, the response for that one? Because we did have some weed spraying that's been going on, and there was a question raised and I don't have the answer to that one in front of me. So Kate will get that to me before we finish. Okay, the Carisbrook levy. We knew this one was going to come up, and it has. Several people have raised questions around the Carisbrook levy. I guess there's a lot, I'm trying to roll them into a general range of questions. There's been lots of talk about, one of them was saying there's been lots of talk about the construction been going on for months and months and months. Why is it taking so long, and when's it finally going to start? That's a very common question we get an awful lot. Great work has been done on the creek some months ago. It's been allowed to grow back again. Why? What's happening there? Question around the bridge at the highway in Carisbrook and so on. So there's been a fair bit of questioning around that, which we certainly expected to get. So I'll just give you a brief update that I've received this morning, and then Karen, I'm sure you can add some extras into there too. So I know it sounded a bit like a broken record when it comes to the Carisbrook levy, and I keep saying to people, it is progressing, and it is. I can tell you, and anybody out there that is listening to us this morning, no one is more frustrated about the slow progress than we are. And I think some of our staff internally get a little bit frustrated because we constantly ask a question, we constantly push. but we are making progress. I'm sure everybody's aware that a planning permit was issued and has been issued for the works that are required, the construction of the levee itself, and the associated earthworks with that one. So that was all part of the permit, the infrastructure and the utility installations that are required as part of that levee work. I can say that the negotiations with the two landholders that are impacted most by this particular development, we are continuing to negotiate with them, and those negotiations have been really positive and are making good progress. And we are getting very close to agreement with those landholders. Yeah, it's a little while, we're getting close, but we're not quite there yet. So that is actually still happening and is an ongoing one. It's a fairly complicated process when you need to acquire land and enter into those sorts of agreements. And it's a fairly protracted process that is covered by various laws that we need to follow. That is happening. We are finalising detailed engineering plans for the Vic Track, the works to put the culverts underneath the old Vic Track railway line, and we also need to get North Central Catchment Management Authority approvals as well as we go out to tender for that work to commence. But we are getting very close to that point with those negotiations. There are some, as many of you I'm sure will be aware, there's a lot of material that's been placed on site in preparation for that work to begin, and that is getting, it will help keep that work moving once we get the final green light. Obviously, we need to negotiate with Vic Roads regarding the opening up of the highway, and that's again will be subject to a tender process, which we'll have to go through. In relation to the creek, this is an important one. We are engaging a company to prepare a creek management plan for the township area of the creek. So the bed of the creek actually goes through the town. We will be developing, we are engaging a company to undertake that process about how we're going to manage the creek into the future. But of course that involves government departments and the North Central Catchment Management Authority, as well as the community. That will be a process that will be managed by someone other than council. I think that gives it a level of independence, if you like, and fresh eyes to come and have a look at that. And that, I understand, will be done. They will be commencing that work next month, end of June, I think is the plan for that work to be undertaken in terms of developing that management plan. And that plan will actually then determine the works of the council for the out years going forward. So that will be a very clear statement of the community. The community obviously will be part of the development of that plan, and that's one of the requirements of that particular company when they come in to do that work. I don't think there's much else I can say. Karen, have I missed anything? I'm sure you're more than I am.
I don't think you've missed anything. I think I actually did drive out to Carisbrook, and I was amazed really to see just what the amount of the soil that we've been able to collect in preparation for the works to start. So I thought that was a bonus in a sense, that we've been able to be prepared to go the minute that we line up all of the ducks. They're still all over the ship a bit, but every day there seems to be a positive step now. So it's starting to have a little bit more momentum, I think, but it has not been this one has not been an easy one, Noel, you'll agree, I'm sure. But
it has taken a lot of our energy, hasn't it?
Look, it really has, and it's just such an important thing to do, you know. And I suppose I would like to say I'm so happy that we're doing the new modelling for the floodplains, both at Denali and at Carisbrook. Like, we need this so desperately. It's just anyway, those two things are really big and important to us, that we really do want to be able, when we leave in October, November, whenever that we do go, that at least there could be some finality about what the next step will be and when it is, you know. So I'm that's really what we're all committed to, I think, Noel, at this stage. We would really love to see something, definitely.
Yes, as I said at the start, no one is more frustrated about the slow progress than we are. And I think, we stuck our neck out a few times. I don't think I'll be sticking out again to say when we're actually going to start this, because I think I said we were going to start it last September. But
I know.
But things have gone away and will continue, and it's been but I think, to be really honest, there were 7 years of inaction before we arrived, and in a couple of years that we've been here, we got it very close to the point of getting this thing up and started. And whilst it may not be finished before we leave, I'm absolutely confident we'll in fact commence construction. And to me, that's a massive achievement considering where we started this rather tortuous. So let's leave that one there. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Well, it's just important, I think, to remember, Noel, that this is a project that's half done. It's this last bit is the final bit, but there's been a lot of mitigation activities that have already occurred there. So, I mean, it's really, we do definitely need to make this a complete project. It's just such an important thing, I think, for us to actually get this one done.
Yeah, couldn't agree. One thing I would say, that because one of the questions did touch on the issue about funding. Again, just to explain that the funding for this project is 1/3 council, 1/3 state government, 1/3 federal government. Council, we have committed our money. Our money is there. It's in the bank. It's in the budget, and it's waiting to go. And we'll certainly start construction with our component. The state government and the federal government both say their allocations are okay and are there, but the hold-up is there is an agreement between state and federal government in relation to rehabilitation and recovery after disasters. There's an agreement between those two levels of government which expired about 12 months ago. And so they can't release their components until that agreement is signed. Now, I'm told that agreement is sitting on someone's desk somewhere in the department waiting for the signature. So it's very, very close. But we've been assured by governments, both state and federal, that the money will be okay once we get this agreement sorted between the two levels. So I'm not concerned, to be honest, about the funding for it. I'm very confident we will see that money and we will get that finalised and signed off very, very soon. I do. And I know. Yeah, sorry.
I know you and Lucy, the CEO, have both been agitating through various channels about seeing if there's any way we can get some indication of the time that we could realistically expect a response.
Yeah, the minister had a letter from me very, very, very recently on that one. So we'll continue to pursue that one. So I don't think we should be worrying too much about the funding. It will be there, and will enable that to be built very, very soon. Just following on, Karen, and you may want to touch on this one too, but following on the rate issue, we've had a question about farmers, about how we're helping farmers and the challenges that farmers face. And we absolutely understand that. And this was part of our discussion only this week about, as we talked about property valuations and so on. This particular has raised questions about the challenges of farmers. They talk about the barley tariffs, which you and I talked about this week, shortages, wool sales, and those sorts of things, and the impact that the important impact that our farming sector does have on the community. Do you want to make a comment about that one, Karen? Because I know this one very dear to your heart.
Well, it is. And being a farmer myself, I'm aware of all this, even though I'm not paying my rates in this central Goldfield Shire. But unfortunately, farming land at the moment pretty much is beyond belief, and pretty much right throughout all of the arable and the productive land, right across probably all of Western Victoria at the moment. It's just the moment any land is on the market, there's pretty much a purchaser. So there is going to be an increase in the valuation of our farming land across the Shire, which we were sort of hoping may have settled after a couple of really very enormous sales the previous year, but sales have continued, and the value of the farming production last year, of course, reinforced the fact that it was a very good year and this land is very productive. However, there really isn't an end in sight for the value of farming land, but at the same time, the product is now going to be challenged from here on in. And I don't want to get into an economic domain where I'm not an expert, but I do know that we do grow barley. We were quite disappointed about that tariff, 80.5% on top of the agreed price is a huge impost. We do provide a lot of other agricultural products, of course, to China. And at this stage, like I think the wine industry is also very nervous about what impacts they might also be hit with, and that would affect our shire as well. So I think the assistance to farmers may come actually a little bit further on into next year before we will really know what the outcome of some of this sort of change in what we normally have to deal with into our whole business around our farming sector. It's I think it's quite unsettled right now.
I think, yeah, and we are very mindful of the impact of all these things on our farming community, and I guess particularly the valuations of farming land at the moment, and it hasn't, from latest information, is the last 12 months, the valuation of farms hasn't gone up the same way it went up last year. We seem to have a bit of a spike last year, which had an impact on our farming community. But we certainly are very mindful of that. And I think that there's a 20% discount. I think that our farmers get, they pay 80% of the general rate. So we try, many councils don't do that. So we are doing what we can. And so please be assured to the writer of that question that we are certainly mindful. And there's no stronger advocate for the farming community of sitting around the table than Karen, I assure you, because I know she deals with that at home every single day. So please be assured that's very front of mind.
And I'm very pleased. Oh, we do have a representative from the farming community on the group that Hugh is actually chairing, or Rebecca is chairing, and Hugh is involved with.
Indeed.
And I was very pleased. So if people do wish things to be, if they do have any suggestions or any way, please get in touch with her, and I'm sure she'd raise those concerns with that group.
Yeah, and it's worthwhile saying too, again, reassuring the farming community, all of us as administrators have had some experience in the rural sector and the farm sector.
Yeah, absolutely. In all of us. We all have.
Yeah. So let's move along. We've still got a few more to go, and I don't want to just keep this going indefinitely. I'm sure we've probably lost a few, but we've gained a few too. So if you've just joined us, we talked around a whole range of subjects this morning, and we've got some great questions. They're still coming in, and I'm doing my best to field them as best I can. So I'm not going to say who raised this question with me, but I think everybody will know who's asked the question. This is in relation to the splash park. This is a passion for many families around the shire about where we're going with the splash park. At this stage, and I'm not going to try and stall it, but this, you would be aware that as part of our skate park development, there was a space down there allocated for maybe a future skate park. Now that's not locked in by any means, but I think it shows, our commitment to developing this facility, because it's one that I think has been asked of us many times, and it's not outrageously expensive. It is my understanding that the splash park has been given a fair bit of consideration by our recreational strategy work, which we are about to receive. I think we're going to even get the first draft of that maybe next week. And I'm very confident that the splash park has been given some prominence in that. If that's the case, then obviously opens up the opportunity for us to then go back and do some further investigations with Sport and Rec, with the state government, to maybe achieve some funding, because it's not horrendously expensive, and many councils have been able to attract it for these sorts of works. The other thing, of course, is we are looking at the redevelopment of our pool area as well. That's something that's been announced this week. I'm sure it will be considered as part of all that one. So I'd love to say to the questioner, yes, we're going to do it, because it's one of those, it's a project that I personally would love to see achieved, because I know how much it means to so many families here, who actually currently go down and use the magnificent facility down at Creswick, for instance. And every time I drive through Creswick, I look across with some envy to what they've been able to achieve there, and the number of young people who use that facility. So it is very much front of mind, and it's not been forgotten, I assure you. Another question. Go on, Karen. Sorry.
Just before we leave that recreation area, no, I just thought one of the earlier grants that we got just this last week, I think it was assistance to some of the sporting clubs. And I just thought that I'm pretty certain that our team have been in touch with everybody who may benefit from that. But it was more about getting started up again, football clubs, netball clubs. And if anybody hasn't been contacted, it would be great if they could find out whether or not they could apply for that particular grant.
Kate has just told me that it's been emailed out to all the clubs around the Shire would have received an email.
That is, yeah, no, that is great. I'd hate any of our clubs to miss out on an opportunity for.
If anybody's part of a club that hasn't heard about that one, please make sure you contact the Shire and we'll make sure we get that information to you, because it's not a huge amount of money and it certainly wouldn't be enough money to build a splash park, but it may be help with some planning. Who knows? We'll see where that might fit within that. It's a very short time frame to get that application in, and of course, it's only a small bucket of money. It's going to be a lot of competition for it. So, okay, we just need to keep moving because we've still got a few questions to get to yet, and again, I welcome anybody who might have joined us in more recent times, and please keep your questions coming in. There's been quite a few that have come across the table since we started, so it's really great. There is a question here about allocating some resources towards some upgraded Christmas deck celebrations across the Shire. This was one that was discussed last year, and we did take a first few tentative steps, who the writer of this question will know, to start to get some improvements around that, particularly around some lighting in the main street. Now, I do know that is still a very live discussion internally about how we might do that. And I think within council's existing budget, that money is there. There is some money there to continue to improve it as we commenced last year. I'll take that one on notice too, because that's something again which I've taken a personal interest in, because I think it's such an important one. And I guess this year it's one of those things which is going to be probably more important than ever in terms of community.
I think so too. Yeah.
Community, providing a sense of pride and so on. So look, I really thank the person who's asked that question, and I'm going to put that to one side and I'm going to follow that one up offline and come back to that question. She and I have discussed it a few times in the past. So I'll take that one. That's the answer to this point. We'll get some more information back just as soon as I can get an update on that one. Weed spraying is one that has been raised. It's a fairly complex one, and this has been raised with me, particularly around Denali. There were some issues around weed spraying and how council is managing that. There are a number of councils have ceased using glyphosate and so on around some of our residential areas. And that is something that we as a council are exploring further. I know there was some angst created this year about some of the activities on the edges of Denali. Can I say that we are, as a council, actively participating in a program with the MAV and Deakin University? We are looking at ways we can find alternative options and alternative ways of managing weeds and controlling weeds around the Shire. Weeds are a massive problem for every rural municipality. And some do it better than others. I'm not sure where we sit on the scale of how well we do. I do know there was some concerns have been raised with me. But we were certainly looking at adjusting our practices to minimise the amount of chemicals that we use. It's a work in progress. We can't afford to let the weeds get out of control, but at the same time, we are really conscious of the fact that we do need to do better. I probably can't say much more than that, but I do know the questioner who has raised this one with me, and it is something that we are looking at really closely about how we can do better, how we can be more environmentally sound in the way that we manage our weeds. And so I will take some of that further information on to the applicant, and I might just leave it at that one for the moment. Council elections has been raised, as I thought it might. Council elect question. I'll read this one because I don't want anybody to suggest that I'm putting words into somebody else's mouth. Council elections are coming up. Can the old sacked councillor, can the sacked old, I shouldn't say old, former councillor, I should. Can the sacked former councillor stand again? Will your job to fix the mess they left behind be finished in time? Simple answer to that first question, I have been asked this one a fair few times. Anybody can stand for council elections, provided they are a resident of the Shire. It doesn't matter whether they are former councillors or not. Everybody, that's a democratic process. Anybody is entitled to stand if they so wish. You don't even have to be a property holder. You have to be a resident of the Shire to stand. And there's some clear guidelines about that, and those guidelines will become more available in the coming weeks as we start to get closer to the election time. We'll be running some training sessions, information sessions, and so on. There is a requirement for council candidates to go through some training, formal training, prior to nominating for council. And those things will be required. Those are things that are coming up in the new Act. And so those are things are out of council's hand. Council doesn't run the election. The election is run by the Victorian Electoral Commission. Will we finish our job? That's a really, I don't think our job will ever really be finished.
No, won't be done. Won't be.
We did set some very clear targets that we wanted to achieve while we were here, and I'm confident we will get those done. They may not all be completed because the COVID situation has restricted us somewhat in the last couple of months, but we have a very heavy schedule ahead to get some of this work done. And I think the council meeting this week was evidence of that in terms of the, organising the planning scheme and so on, and getting that straight out. That was one of the early tasks that we needed to get done. Our task will be finished in a general sense. There will be lots of work that will be left to be done, but I think the structure and the policy framework that we put in place will enable the incoming council to continue with the reforms that we have started. So in general, my response to that would be yes. Karen, would you agree with that?
Look, absolutely no. I mean, it could go on and on and on forever, probably. But that's what councils do anyway. But I just think that the basic structures are all pretty much now either done or very close to being signed off. So we do honestly and genuinely believe that what we have achieved will give a new council a huge heads up start to be able to build on that and to adapt them to as they want to as they go. These, they have that opportunity to make their own nuances and things, but the basic structure of how you behave, what has to be done, how it's done, this is the suggestions, this is what our experience has shown us works best, all of that is there for the new council to work with and get a really good start. I think from the very beginning, we all took that was the lens through which we all worked. We knew that we would be handing over, and so all of the work that has been done, and it's a mountain of work, has produced at the end of that then a document that's going to be able to be just utilised and go forward. The managers understand the history, but coming in as a new councillor, that sometimes isn't really that easy to understand what was driving some of those things. So there will be a continuity of why these things have been decided, why that is the best way we've found has worked. And the new councillors, I think, will be really well placed to understand and to just simply move on and do the work and then restore the faith in having new local democratic representation, which everybody I know really can't wait to have. So, mind you, I've loved working with this community. I know you have too, Noel. It's just been a wonderful community.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I have. It has been one of the most. I've been in local government now for nearly 25 years, and this couple of years has been some of the most enjoyable that I've done. And I guess the only thing that really offends me, I guess, when I talk to the community generally, is those few people out there say, well, you're just a blower, you just come in and you're doing all this work, you're going to shoot through, you won't care what happens after you leave. And I find that quite offensive because I personally, and I know all three of us have invested a huge amount of time, way and above what we're actually paid to do in the interest of this community, because I've actually come to love this community just like my own. And I mean that absolutely from my heart. And I think we've done our very, very best. And from the first day we arrived here, we made it a very clear decision. We would take this task and we would manage this task as if it was our own, community. And I think we can. And I don't think anybody can point to anywhere where we've made decisions that have not been in the interest of the community. And I'm happy to defend any decision we've made on that basis. Anyway, this isn't about us. This is about the council elections.
Yeah.
On that one, I'm going to close by challenging the community. There are just two questions, and I've said this publicly before, and I'm going to keep saying it until we leave. When it comes to council elections, I don't make any reflection on any individual that was on council previously, but what the community does need to do and what the electors need to do when council candidates declare that their intentions, the community, I think, should be asking those candidates two very simple questions, quite simple questions. The first one is, what have you learned by what's happened here in the Central Goldfield Shire? Because that's a very fundamental question in terms of direction for the future. So the candidate needs to be able to say, what have I learned from what's gone on here for the last couple of years? And then what would you do differently in the future to make sure it doesn't happen again? They're the two really fundamental questions that have to be asked by anybody. And I would suggest to anybody in the community, if the candidate can't answer those questions adequately, then I think you need to think about where you're going to cast your vote. Now, I can't direct any more, I can't be any blunter than that. That's about as blunt as I'm going to get in any of these things. But I think those are some really fundamental questions, because I can't imagine anything more heartbreaking for this community to see a return to what was going on in the past back in the council. I don't think it will, because this organisation is a very, very different organisation to what it was 3 years ago. It's been transformed in every way. So there'll be no coming back to the old days in a sense, but I think it's a matter of making sure the reforms that we've put in place are continued into the future is really, really important. So I might just leave it at that. And I encourage anybody, if anybody is interested or thinking about standing, come and talk to us. We're not going to tell you whether you should or you shouldn't, but we're happy to explain the role, explain what it is that we've done, and just talk generally about the information that might help you make up your mind if you want to run for council. Okay, we're ticking off these, but we've still got a few more questions that are coming in.
No, can I just add a little bit to that last one? I would just like to say that in this whole sort of area of local council, there is so much support for people to actually undertake further development, professional development about governance, about what is the business of council. So for people that may feel that they really do not know enough about becoming involved, there is the mandated training to begin with, as I understand that. I don't know how it's going to be conducted, but I understand it's going to happen one way or another. But even after that, there are heaps of opportunities for particularly newly elected councillors to join in with other newly elected councillors and join in those sessions. They're conducted all through Victoria. You do not have to necessarily go to Melbourne, although you may. The MAV and the rural councils, all of those bodies are always providing this sort of opportunity for people to be reassured that they do understand and they are delivering their responsibility as a councillor. So you will learn on the job one way or another, and the opportunities will be there. So think about it.
And I don't think anybody should be put off by getting involved in local government. Yes, it's a fairly complex piece, but it doesn't take you long if you're committed to learning to actually, you can do that, and anybody can take on. My first toe in the water, believe it or not, 25 years ago was when I sat on the kindergarten parents committee. That was my first role in any sort of public life, and I've ended up in Maryborough. So there you go. Okay, look, we are getting towards the end. I've got one question left, which has come in. Again, I want to say thank you to anybody. I think we've had over 30 people participating this morning, which I think is really encouraging. And we've had a few messages that have come in and said, hey, I hope you're going to do this again. So I think that's what I wanted to hear, because this was a bit of a water exercise. So I assure you, we will be doing this one again. I've got one question left, which I don't have a clear answer to, which is in relation to the Heritage Grandstand down at Princes Park. Of course, we've made a big deal about the money we've got for the $2 million we've got to do some work at the Heritage Pool. which is very, very welcome, and we're very excited about that. I have had a couple of people actually over the last couple of weeks talk to me about the grandstand at Princes Park. We know it is an icon down there. It's not one that's actually bubbled to the top. We have so many heritage buildings that are in such urgent need of repair and upgrade, and certainly the grandstand would be one of those. It's not. It hasn't bubbled to the top of the list, but it has been raised, and I know the users of that facility have raised it in the past. I think there has been a suggestion that we do need to do an overall management plan for Princes Park, and I believe that may well be one of the recommendations that will come out of our rec strategy, which we're hoping to receive in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So to that question, I can assure you it is on our radar, but it's not something which has bubbled to the top yet. But I'm pretty confident it will be part of a recommendation to do some serious work about how we plan, how we enhance the facilities down at Princes Park. And of course, that is a very important heritage asset and will be protected as part of that and upgraded. And we will need to get specialist advice how to do that as well. We have got a heritage management plan for the swimming pool precinct, and so that will drive and guide our works that we are implementing out there as part of this latest grant. As I say, we have talked about a lot about our heritage buildings in recent times. We have some urgent works that are required. The museum here in Maryborough, which has got props holding the walls up and things like that at the moment. In fact, it's been vacated because it's not safe for people to go inside. That's a really critical piece of heritage. Yeah. The Carisbrook Town Hall is one which we're doing some little bits of work on as we can. And I know that the Historical Society there I've got some plans to do some additional work. So we are working methodically through those, but it does take some time to do that. So folks, I think we're going to wind up. We've been going for over an hour now, and we've covered a whole range of issues. And I think the response has been such that we will indeed be doing this again. And I'd like to think we can do it again fairly soon, because obviously there's a lot of people who have got lots of questions. This, I understand, this is available. The proceedings from today will be available on our Facebook page, I believe. So if anybody hasn't been able to tune in and get the information they want, or wasn't able to participate at this time, because I know this time won't suit everybody, it will be available through Council's Facebook page. Now, and I guess it may eventually get onto our website, but I know it's on the Facebook page almost immediately. So if you haven't been able, if you've got friends who may be interested in some of these issues we've touched on, then encourage them to go to our Facebook page and they can watch the proceedings from this morning. So I want to say thank you, Karen, to you. I know you put some time aside. Unfortunately, Hugh wasn't able to be here. If anybody of you are wondering, he's had some family issues he's needed to deal with, and he would love to have been here participating today. I know a number of council staff have been watching and will pick up some of the issues that have been raised, just like they would if this was a normal part of our listening post process. We will do this again, I assure you. It's been as successful as I hoped it has been. And there's been lots of people tuning in and participating. And I want to say thank you to all of you. If you haven't got the exact answer that you want, our phone numbers are out there. Any form of council communications has the phone numbers and emails of your administrators. And we love to hear from you. We're not able to get out and about as we once would because of the COVID restrictions, but hopefully we'll get back to some sort of normality before too long. So please don't hesitate to contact us and follow up any issues that you wish, and we'll be happy to answer questions as best we can. So thank you all for joining us this morning, and I wish you all a very good day, and we'll see you at the next one.
Okay, bye-bye.